Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's
alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to It's Alive Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they're ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the outlaw, Dr. H.R. Smokestein, T.H.E. And with me as always is my very own scream queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride Smokestein, the hard expert, the guts and gore, the gorgeous, sexy Amy Rose.
Hi.
Amy, this was originally supposed to be a Valentine's Day episode.
I know.
We'll listen to the Horrorverse headlines on Friday. We'll explain.
6 days past.
Yeah, but we'll explain why we weren't around last week on the Horrorverse headlines. I'm not wasting time on it now. But you know what? I forgot to mention on the Horrorverse headlines. I know it's not really horror related, but it makes me excited. Post Nirvana. What do you think?
Nirvana after Nirvana? No, I'm joking. Post Nirvana? Yeah, no, I was happy with that.
He fucking fits the bill perfectly. What a voice.
I hadn't known about the lockdown session at all.
No, if you want to hear Post Malone do like a lot of Nirvana songs, check him out on YouTube. They did, it was a benefit during COVID.
Same Travis Barker.
I don't know the other two guys.
The guy not in the dress, he looked familiar and I can't put a name.
Yeah, Post Malone's wearing a dress and the bass player, this Asian guy, he's wearing a dress. Now, obviously, that's all a tribute for Kurt. Kurt used to come out in the dress every now and
I
again.
think it suits Post Malone.
Watching the performance at the SNL 50th concert, the only thing I could pay attention to was the fact that every time he went up and sang, there were certain parts that sounded so Kurt-like, and then he got so perfect that they'd pan in on the 3 surviving members of Nirvana, and they were smiling ear to ear. Chris Novoselic started nodding. Dave Grohl looks like he's happier than he's ever been, and I believe his name is Pat Smear.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know him as a big Nirvana member as far as I know.
He was the original.
I gotta check this out. He was definitely a touring guitarist with
Okay.
him. I thought he was on the Bleach album because I know they had an extra guitarist on the Bleach album, but he did work when he is there. He's with them now, but there's rumors of a 2026 world tour with this lot, and if this happens, I will lose my fucking shit. Oh my fucking God, there is no way under this fucking wide earthly world that I will not go to that concert. I will do everything in my power to get to that.
I would assume, thinking of his voice, just what you were saying there about how like Kurt Cobain he sounded, that certain parts of Smell Like Teen Spirit, 100% he would have been identical to Cobain.
No, he was never an official member of the group. He was a touring musician with the group.
Touring magician?
Musician. But I like him. He's always smiling at us. He looks like he's so fucking happy because apparently they've done more than one of these reunions. They did it for the fire benefit in LA as well, where they had Joan Jett and the girl from Sonic Youth and a few others come on.
Dave Grohl's daughter? No.
And Dave Grohl's daughter come up and do a few songs with him. But I mean, watching him with Post Malone, they looked happy and he seemed to just fit it. And he got it right because that was my only thing with the fire one. Joan Jett did a good job. The first girl who came out, I wasn't sure what her name was. She did a great job. But they were all just missing this Kurt factor. There was something about they weren't hitting the notes exactly the way you want to hear them from Kurt, as if it was Kurt Cobain on stage doing it. And I know sometimes you say you want to put your own spin on it, but there was just something about Post Malone's version. And I haven't been a Post Malone fan. I don't know any of his music. I don't know any of his stuff. I thought he was a rapper. I mean, that's what I was led to believe. He was a rapper. I knew The Undertaker liked him, which confused me.
Why?
Yeah.
Because the Undertaker is.
Well, it was like, why does the Undertaker, the dead man, the guy who's traditionally
Because Post Malone's supposed to be a lovely, lovely guy.
He seems like a
Everything that
very
I've
nice
heard
guy.
about him, everything that I've seen about him, and everything that anybody ever says, it was, you know, when you hear things about celebrities, he's supposed to be just one of these genuine people. Maybe that's why the
But
Undertaker.
I was in a terrible mood that morning, and next thing I see that this happened, and I threw it on, and I was just smiling ear to ear, and I was just like, I can't fucking, I hope this happens so bad.
Yeah.
So bad. I hope this happens, because I thought there was never a hope in hell I'd ever get to see Nirvana on stage. And I know it's not really Nirvana, but it's
Look, come here. It's the same way people get excited to go see Queen. You're
Well, I
not
told
getting
you-
the full. You're getting full lineup bar one. Like,
yeah,
so
but like I said to you, I was like, this is one. It was like, fuck that, I'm bringing the kids.
Mhm.
Have them say their first gig was Nirvana. Holy shit!
Throw
man.
the two of them up on your shoulders.
Oh fuck! Hopefully. And do you know what's crazy? We talk what we're about to talk about today.
Mhm.
I thought Nirvana getting back together would be a crazier concept than anything else I've ever heard, because, you know, Kurt being dead and it being about, you know what? Is it 30 years now?
1990 what? Yeah, 40? No, 30. Don't. I'm not 40. Yeah, no, 30.
Was it
something.
96 or was it 94, 95 he died?
I was very young. I
he
think
was
it was
dead
94.
before I liked him. You know that
I
much.
was dead. You know, he was dead before I knew who he is. Let me have a look.
I think it was 90. Well, no, they have an album in 90.
It was 94, 5th of
Yeah.
April 1994. So
You would have been 4.
I would have been 3.
So, I mean, 30 years on? No, 20 years on?
30
30
years
years
this
on.
year. Last year.
And there's a chance they're coming back.
No,
And
30 years. I'm terrible.
And I mean, this is to me, that's absolutely fucking whoa. And still, as crazy as that sounds, we're about to get a whole lot fucking crazier.
So let's get started with our strange love story then.
Oh yeah.
So, but to go forward, we actually need to go back. So all the way back to 1988 and the Pierce family post-abduction and the Chucky attack.
They've been through a fair bit at this stage, to be fair. The murder of Daniel, the abduction and stabbing of Sarah, which resulted in the permanent damage to the still unborn Neca Pierce. Not stillborn, still unborn.
Neca Pierce.
Oh, Amy. Too soon. No, they have to try and move forward dealing with the aftermath of Ray's last attack. So obviously, if you haven't heard episode 1, go back and listen to episode 1 because we explain what goes on there. But essentially, Charles becomes obsessed with the Pierce family. So much so, it's like that he wants this package family. He wants this ready-made family for him to jump right into. And the easiest way to do that is kill Papa Pierce and move on in on his territory. Unfortunately, his wife, his grieving widow, not so enthusiastic about the idea. So he kidnaps her, ties her up, and tries to persuade her. With sunflowers, apparently. Lots and lots of sunflowers. Rooms full of sunflowers.
Did he like BDSM clubs the way Tiffany liked BDSM clubs?
I can't tell for sure. I don't know. I've never heard.
'Cause
I mean, he met her in a club.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
And we know that he liked to get
Torturous.
violent in his sexual escapades. But yeah. So, I mean, you can go back, you can listen to that in episode 1 and we kind of get into what happened there. But obviously, Charles, when he hears the cops coming from that night, he believes that Sarah Pierce has somehow tipped them off, despite the fact that he has her fucking tied up.
Yeah.
Do you know? Yeah. And that she hasn't left, she hasn't been out of that room since he caught her. So, I mean, he obviously wasn't thinking straight at that stage, blames her and stabs her to try and kill her, but he tries to do it in the most violent, sick, sadistic way that he possibly can, and decides he's going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, or in this case, 2 people with 1 knife, and he stabs her right through the belly, trying to kill Neca while she was still inside the womb.
So it got Neca's spine, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It ends up severing her fucking spinal cord, which leaves her disabled from birth. And stuck living with Sarah, who is dealing with some severe PTSD,
Which is understandable.
Come here. I mean, a psychotic killer has you tied up and wants to marry you. I'd be a bit sketchy too, especially after he just killed your fucking husband. Like, you know,
Probably wouldn't be getting myself involved with anybody anytime soon after that.
Well, she never does again.
Well, yeah, that's understandable.
She takes Neca, she takes Barb, and they move their ass into the countryside and try to get on with life. Barb does all right. She kind of obviously being not disabled, not kind of, and it's obviously it's not that disability is going to hold you fucking back. If you're disabled, you can do anything anyone else can do, especially in
Probably her
this day
mother
and
and
age.
all, though.
But that was the problem.
Yeah.
Problem wasn't so much that Neca didn't want to move forward in her life, but her mother treated her like she was fragile, like she was going to fucking fall apart and break if anything happened to her. So she kept her completely close, and because of her disability and because of the way Sarah treated the disability, it kind of kept Neca confined there. And on top of that, there was this codependency going on where Sarah felt like she needed to protect Neca because of her disability, but Neca felt like she needed to take care of Sarah because of her fragile mental state. Okay. And Barb, in the meantime, was a very, from what I have heard, a very self-centered person. So as soon as she was ready to move on with her life, she fucked on off out there and left the two of them to their own devices. And got married, had a kid, became successful, made a lot of money. You know, you'd think because of their connection to Ray, they would know the developing story that then happens throughout the next 30 years. Stuff that we've discussed over the last 3 episodes at length. Yeah. You know, these Andy Barclay situations, the Tiffany situation, the Jessie Jade cases. But they were oblivious to it all. Sarah mentally had checked out, and Neca had no real idea of what exactly happened to her. You know, as far as she was concerned, she was just born disabled. She wasn't given the information of what had actually happened to her father, what had actually happened to her. Her and Barb were completely oblivious to the fact that their father had been murdered by Charles Lee Ray.
Okay.
Excuse me. So they were living in a house in rural Providence, New England. Everyday life was basically Neca pottering around the house. Sarah was a big art lover, liked to do her artwork. She found it therapeutic. Any time Neca tried to make a move, like tried to get out of there, the mother would kind of really lay it on thick. And then she was so protective. I mean, like one example that Neca herself gives now is actually the day this all kicks off. And she said that a package was delivered to the house. We'll get into that in a minute. But before we get into that, she actually said the guy that delivered the package was someone who she went to school with. Okay. And that he started flirting with her. And was planning to swap numbers with her. But Sarah interrupted and brought Neca back inside. And when Neca protested, she said, look, Neca, he's only being nice to you because you're disabled. You know, he doesn't really want to be with you. He feels sorry for you. And I mean, so if you're living with that all your life, your confidence has to be at an all-time fucking low, like, you know?
So, and as much as they tried to keep their heads buried in the sand in the hopes that their ordeal was over, their past would eventually find them. On October 8th, 2013, a package arrived at the Pierce home. In that package lay a good guy doll. No message, no return address.
To figure out where it came from, we got to go to 2003. So we're jumping in this way back machine over and over and over again. This is DeLorean. Fill up the DeLorean because we're going to be going back and forth more than Marty McFly and Doc Brown. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to have a look at one of the most infamous Hollywood downfalls in history. That's right. We're going to talk about the rise and fall of Jennifer Tilly.
Yes. So Tilly was born Jennifer Ellen Chan on September 16th,
I never knew she was Asian. I only heard an interview with her before all this kicks off. An interview, and she said, yeah, she's half Asian.
Yeah. She was born in Harbour City, Los Angeles, to Harry Chan, a used car salesman, and Patricia Nee Tilly, a Canadian school teacher and former stage actress. I would also have said that she was British.
But again, I mean, like, Harry Chan, how many fucking Asian Harrys do you know?
Well, he was of Chinese descent. So he was born, Her mother was of Irish and Finnish descent.
One of her own, huh?
Yep. She has...
no wonder she was depressed. She's got that Irish depression in her. That's all it is.
She has an older brother, Steve, and 2 younger sisters, Meg and Rebecca. Following her, Meg Tilly was married to Colin Firth.
Well, we talk a bit about Meg later because fucking Jennifer killed her.
Yep. Following her parents' divorce when she was 5, Tilly was raised by her mother and stepfather John Ward on rural Texada Island in British Columbia. According to her sister Meg, Ward was a sadistic paedophile.
Nice.
Their sister Rebecca agreed, but Jennifer did not comment on the issue.
I've never heard her talk about that.
No.
I mean, like, in preparation for this, I went back and watched old interviews with her because she's Oscar nominated. There is plenty of fucking early interviews of her before the 2000s when she goes off the rails. But I never knew this.
Why give a paedophile if the airtime, though? That would be my thing. Why the fuck should I talk? Do you know that kind of way? I wouldn't want to talk about his name.
Yeah, but if Meg is talking about it, surely the question was brought to her at some stage.
Possibly, yeah.
You know, she just never really brought it up. She never spoke about it.
Yeah. Her mother divorced again when Tilly was 16, and then the family moved to Langford.
That's because the fucking husband got sick of it. Like, 16? Too old for me. I'm out of here.
Family. So the family then moved to Langford, a suburb of Victoria, British Columbia, where Tilly attended Belmont Secondary School. During her high school years, she developed an interest in theatre, which prompted her to actively participate in plays as an extra with the assistance of her mother. Tilly held a bachelor's degree in theatre from Stevens College in Missouri. In 1983, Tilly had small roles and had a recurring guest role on Hill Street Blues as Gina Strignoli. Presuming I'm saying that right. That was a mobster's widow who becomes romantically involved with the detective Henry Goldblum.
Can I ask one question just to stop here? Now, obviously, we're getting all this off our Wikipedia page. Yeah. Because, I mean, so we're just trying to run through what Jennifer Tilly did before she went crazy. But I have a question. When was she in do we have any idea of the year she was in Stevens College in Missouri?
Let me have a look.
Because was Kent Military School not in Missouri? So she would have known about all this from back then, right? She would have had to have heard about it if she was there.
Well, no, because Kent, all this would have been taking place, like Tilly would have been 40 when all that was going on in the 90s. She was born in 1956.
How old is Jennifer Tilly?
She was born in 1956. 66, 76, 86, 96, 06, 16, 26. She's coming up on...
She would have been coming out. Well, I mean, spoiler alert, Tilly's dead.
Tilly's dead. So she would have been coming up on 70.
Fuck off.
That can't be right. Am I 56,
God
66,
damn, she's a hot ass 70-year-old.
All right, Josh.
Was a hot ass 70-year-old.
She played
fucking
Fraser. She played Fraser Crane's seductor. Does she have grandchildren? Did she have grandchildren?
She never married.
Oh, did she not?
No kids.
So she played Fraser Crane's...
Oh, well, I think she might have been married, but she never long-term married. She had boyfriends in the years up until her death. So I don't know. But I don't think she has children.
She played Fraser Crane's seductive but ditzy date, Candy Pearson, on an episode of the 4th season of Cheers and appeared as a similar character on the 11th season of Frasier. I cannot remember her in either.
No, I can't, and I like both
I
those
love
shows.
Those, yeah.
Married once from 84 to 91. Then she had a partner from 2004. Oh no, just before 2004, but when she went crazy. She would be 66 now.
Yeah.
No kids.
No kids. Okay. 66?
66. 1958.
Oh, 1958. I thought it was 56 that I said.
Her birthday is 3 days before mine. September 16th.
She also appeared as Gary's girlfriend on It's Gary Shandling's show, which aired on Showtime.
Never heard of it. Don't even know who Gary Shandling is.
She was also cast as a high-end prostitute on the short-lived comedy Key West alongside Fisher Stevens. In 1989, she had a prominent role in the comedy Let It Ride, starring Richard Dreyfuss. Tilly's breakthrough film role was a short but memorable appearance as a waitress who fails miserably when auditioning to be a singer in The Fabulous Baker Boys, a role that was written specially for her by Steve Kloves.
Fabulous Baker Boys. I feel like I've heard of that one.
Me too. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Olive Neal, a hopelessly bad actress in Woody Allen's 1994 comedy Bullets Over Broadway, but she lost to her co-star Diane Weist. I didn't know she was an Oscar nominee.
I'd like to watch it, but so far I've managed to go my entire life without watching a Woody Allen movie, and I feel like I don't want to watch a Woody Allen movie.
Yeah.
I'm slow to watch that other fucking sick bastards movie, Polanski's movies. But I mean, like, I forced myself to watch Rosemary's Baby because I wanted to know about it.
I've seen Pianist.
I haven't. I generally, when it comes to those two, I try and I hear their name and I'm just like, I couldn't be bothered with it.
I saw The Pianist before I knew what Roman Polanski was about.
Which do you think's worse? Woody or Roman? Woody married his adopted child, and Roman Polanski raped a 13-year-old. At least Woody waited until she was an adult. I'll say that much.
But it's like Morgan Freeman did the same, didn't he?
His step-granddaughter.
Step-granddaughter. Woody Allen. You shouldn't be allowed to marry your adopted fucking daughter.
Was she adopted? Because
I
think
thought
once
she was
adoption,
adopted.
well, yeah,
Because
that's once you're adopted, you are an official family member, aren't you? So I
You
don't think that
are,
would be
but
allowed, would it?
I don't know if it has to be a blood relative.
Woody
Because if there's no, like, obviously incest is illegal because of, like, the shit show. Do you know that kind of way? Like, out of
there's
your
a
progeny.
whole
Like,
page for Woody Allen sex abuse. Okay, sexual allegations. Woody Allen sexual abuse allegations. Okay. In August 1992, American filmmaker and actor Woody Allen was alleged by actress Mia Farrow to have sexually molested their adoptive daughter Dylan Farrow, then age 7.
I'm telling you, Josh.
In Mia Farrow's home. Allen has repeatedly denied the allegation. When the allegation was made, Allen and Mia Farrow had been in a romantic relationship for 12 years. He was doing well for himself, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 children together, 2 adopted, Dylan and Moses, and 1 biological. What a fucking name. Satchel. Now known as Ronan Farrow, he was smart enough to change his name from Bag. The sexual abuse is alleged to have taken place 8 months after Farrow learned Allen and Sun Yi Pervin, whom Farrow adopted with her former husband, Andre Previn, had begun a sexual relationship 3 years before she and Allen began to date. Pervin was a 21-year-old first-year undergraduate when the sexual relationship began. Farrow learned of the relationship in December 1991, which Allen and Pervin say was within 2 weeks of its start. Allen alleged the relationship prompted Farrow to concoct the molestation allegation as an act of vengeance. So he was not he was in no way, shape, or form related to this girl. It's basically the equivalent of like a guy getting with a girl, and then seeing she's got a hot daughter and hooking up with the hot daughter instead.
See, I think that the worst one of them all is John Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas.
Oh, I know who's John Phillips.
Mamas and the Papas, they were a band from the 70s.
Okay.
John Phillips was, I think he might have been their guitarist, but he had a very, very long relationship with his daughter. And when his daughter kind of like...
Blood daughter.
And when his daughter talked about the relationship in her later years, she was so fucked in the head. Like, she was so groomed. She was like, we had a loving relationship. It's like, holy shit, you were groomed for that. There's no
100%.
way after that you were like, oh yeah, this is how the relationship...
Because your natural bodily instinct it will be to push away from that. Because, I mean, like, I've said this before, and this is a very... some people would see this as a controversial statement, but we were talking once... And you were going on about like people like at the time it was homosexuals you were talking about, and you were like, well, people go on about like your brother, and it was like telling him that it's not natural what you do, having sex and all that stuff. And I turned around to you and I said, well, they're right in that sense. It isn't natural because naturally, sex is only for procreating in a natural sense. I mean, when you and me have sex, that is technically unnatural
because we're not
doing it with
100%.
The idea of making a baby, so it's unnatural. So you would think that, especially in the case of family members who know that mixing in a procreating way will result in a heavily disabled child or a mentally disabled, just something that there will be something very wrong with your kid when it comes out, that your natural reaction would be to push it away and not want it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, so I mean, in that sense, she couldn't have naturally wanted to be in that relationship. She would have had to have had it fucking programmed into her by somebody
Like her
else. That this is
dad.
okay. This is okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We love each other. That's all that matters.
So fucking
We're
bad.
just living outside of the social construct, and then what we do is okay. And it just because they say it's not okay doesn't mean that it's not okay. It is. It's fucking not okay.
No.
You know.
No.
Otherwise, when two people who were in a family who were blood related had a baby, the baby wouldn't come out fucking like the elephant. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like we covered.
Not that I'm saying the elephant man's parents were fucking related.
No. The elephant man had elephantitis.
But you get my point.
No, I get your point. Yeah. Like we discussed on Playing with Bones one day. And Tilly, she also starred in Bound in 1996, directed by the Wachowskis, which portrays a lesbian relationship with her character, and it has with Gina Gershon.
Yeah, and you forgot as well, in 1994, she had a small role in The Getaway with Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger.
Oh, yeah.
They were married at that stage, were they? And I only know that Alec
from The
Baldwin...
Simpsons.
That's the only reason I
I
know.
wouldn't know either. Ron Howard was in that episode.
Yeah.
Do they have a throuple going? I'm joking.
No. Did he... Oh, he hardly fucking directed that movie. Did he?
Ron Howard, maybe.
1 second. I love IMDb. Without IMDb, I'd be fucking lost, man. Paste. Check. The Getaway. Directed by Roger Donaldson.
Cool.
So no, I don't know why he was in it. Maybe just because they could get him.
Place where I remember her from is when she played Samantha Cole in the Jim Carrey comedy Liar Liar in 1997. That was my first place I saw her. I know I didn't like her either in it, but I was their standout role to me.
But at the other side of it as well, as a child, for some reason, I had a massive aversion to women with short hair. I hated women with short hair. As soon, no, I don't give a shit now, but as a kid, and remember this is a kid's mind, don't go online and start saying the doctor hates all people, all women with short hair. At the time, I thought it made women look ugly, made them look mannish, boyish. I hated it.
I never
It was-
thought like that.
It also gave me the Karen vibe from a very early on. And I mean, Tilly's character in Liar Liar is as Karen as you're going to get. Gold digging Karen is what she basically is. But I fucking hated her.
Yep. You probably like her in the in Dancing at the Blue Iguana though. She plays a stripper in Part-Time Dominatrix.
Oh no! After that, I fell in love with her, and
course.
I wanted her. She was definitely one of my first because she had a very goth look at times, and she was definitely one of my first goth crushes.
Yeah. She portrayed gossip columnist Luetta Parsons in the Peter Bogdanovich historical drama The Cat's Meow in 2001. And she also starred as Crystal Allen in the Broadway revival of The Women. In 2002, she played Fanny Minifer in the made-for-TV remake of Orson Welles' The Magnificent Ambersons.
And I didn't laugh at Fanny, so...
Oh, I held it in as well.
For the Americans.
It means vagina in Ireland.
Ah.
She was a semi-regular cast member on Family Guy, voicing the Griffin family's neighbour, Bonnie. Oh, I forgot that. Bonnie Swanson.
Yeah, the girl that was pregnant for about 10 years.
That's her. She also did voiceover work for the films Monsters, Inc., Stuart Little, and Home on the Range, as well as the children's series Hey Arnold.
Do you know who she was in Monsters, Inc.? Do you know?
That's the way it's gotta be, no?
No.
Oh, she was the Snakes.
Mike Wazowski's girlfriend.
Yeah, I remember her. That makes sense now that I think about it. Of course.
You can hear her voice. It's so distinctive.
In Disney's The Haunted Mansion, she played Madame Leota, a head in a crystal ball. She'd been, I think I might know that actually. She had been active in the theatre, winning a Theatre World Award for her performance in off-Broadway play One Shoe Off.
And after that, it all went wrong. She career basically started to take a bit of a fucking nosedive for her, and one of the big ones that really dropped her in it was, I mean, people, again, we keep saying, the Andy Barclay story, a lot of the kind of Chucky story, and Chucky has become a bit of a cultural icon because of the movie. That it's hard to find this movie because it got made but then got banned and got buried, but it never really got a wide release, and it's called Chucky Goes Psycho. And she regretted this massively afterwards, but she was offered the role of Tiffany Valentine at that stage. And she turned it down because she felt, being an Oscar-nominated actress, that a horror of this type would be beneath her. A slasher movie would be beneath her. She stated in an interview directly after turning this down that actors only do slasher movies at the beginning of their career and at the end of their career, and she wasn't ready to be at the end of her career yet. So that was fine at the time, but after she turned that down, nothing else started rolling in except for cheap, shitty rom-coms. And it was actually on the filming of a rom-com at the same lot as Chucky Goes Psycho. So she ended up actually literally, like, you know how they have these like big studio fucking warehouses where they shoot the stuff? Her movie, Love on the Side, which got released in 2006, which is about a small town waitress who seeks the attention of the most eligible bachelor. Oh, I gotta watch it. And right next door, Chucky Goes Psycho was being made. She obviously wasn't happy with her position in Hollywood at the time. And she started to get curious about the movie because the movie she had turned down. Would it have been different if I had done this movie instead of this movie, you know? So she's kind of on her breaks going over and back to see the filming of Chucky Goes Psycho. And as she's watching them filming it, she's starting to see what Tiffany Valentine actually is in this movie anyway. Because, I mean, obviously the movie is completely a fictional account of the Jessie Jade murders. And in this movie, Jessie and Jade are the innocent victims of two killer dolls, being Chucky and Tiffany. And as she was watching this, she started to do a bit of research and she started to learn a bit more about Tiffany, to the point where she starts to idolize Tiffany because she sees Tiffany as almost this anti-hero. She's read the script now. She's done her research and she starts to believe that Chucky and Tiffany are almost like this Bonnie and Clyde kind of couple. Yeah. And that Tiffany was this strong, independent woman living outside of the social norms and that she should be revered and not looked down on as this evil person. And she also felt like that the whole Charles Tiffany story was almost like this Shakespearean fucking tragedy where they get pulled apart, where there's this big confusion where Tiffany thinks Charles is cheating on her or screwing her over, and she fucks him over and he gets killed in the process, and then Tiffany is doing everything she can in her power to bring him back, you know? So she sees this as being like this perfect love story, and she's in this state of mind where she's hungry for attention. And she is also romanticizing this shit because she's alone at this point. She's living alone. Her Hollywood fame has worn off. The shine on her Oscar nomination has worn off. People aren't paying as much attention. Her paparazzi aren't following her as much. Not for the reasons she wants them to follow her anyway. And the news just isn't picking up on Jennifer Tilly. Her movies are going to fucking the Hallmark channel rather than to, you know, the big cinemas and the big TV productions, you know, or movie production crews. So she's not exactly in the right state of mind. People at the time just thought she was, I don't know, getting a bit eccentric in her older age. But, yeah. And then just like in the last 3 episodes, Chucky is going to be mentioned and random gruesome accidents begin to occur. In the space of a few days, special effects artist Tony Gardner, paparazzi Peter Peters, and assistant John Spirit. Oh yeah, they all fucking die within. Now, here's this fun fact. Well, first of all, I would like to address the Peter Peters thing. If your fucking surname is a first name, stop naming your kids the same thing. What about Jerome K. Jerome, the poet? Jerome. Why would you do that to your children? Peter Peters. Seriously, who are you? Fucking, who's the guy from Marvel? The guy that wrote... No, the creator of Marvel, the big guy, the big guy. See, every time I can't remember names, and then they're Stanley. God damn it, Stanley. It's like Stan Lee. Stan Lee's obsessed with, you know, first and second names having the exact same first letter. It's like he would his father was Stan Lee, and he was like Peter Peters, perfect.
If it was me, I'd change it to Peter Peterson just to make it a bit.
But your name's Peter, your surname's there. There's nothing you can do about that.
Oh yeah,
Just
I changed
pick
my
a-
first name.
Yeah. Fun fact though,
Mm-hmm.
Joan Spirit
Mm-hmm.
is the twin sister of S Club 7 star Hannah Spirit. You remember S Club 7?
I didn't know
S
she had a sister.
Club, gonna show you. I love that song.
I don't know that song.
Do you
I know
remember?
the rest of their songs. No, I don't know that song.
You don't know that one? I think I'm right. I don't know.
I went to see it in the cinema, actually, their movie.
I forgot they had a movie.
They did have a movie.
I remember
went to
the
see it.
TV
They
show.
clones. They all knew they were clones because they had no belly buttons.
No, can't remember the movie. I remember the TV show.
Okay.
And
I remember
fun fact about the TV show, their landlady in the TV show.
Is Rita from Power Rangers?
Uh-uh.
Where did I see her? No way!
Linda Blair.
Thank you. This happened to me. Well, her hairspray caught on fire. It's
Oh yeah, what's her name? Sorry, Joan, not Hannah.
Spirit.
Joan Spirit. Yeah. So
her hair caught on fire, and then she slipped and fell down 3 or 4 flights of stairs.
And slipped is in heavy quotation marks.
Well, I think once you fall down 3 or 4 flights of stairs, especially if it's the ones that twist and turn, like you're gonna be.
No. The belief is what happened was she was kind of like our stairs. She didn't actually fall down the stairs. She fell over the banister at the top and went straight down. She didn't go down the steps. She went from the top to the floor.
So she fell over the banister.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Peter Peters slipped
Also
again
quotation marks.
in his photo lab, crashing into shelves that housed sulfuric acid, which melted his face, skull, and brains.
Yeah, it was in his photo lab, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Peter Peters, we did mention that Peter Peters was a paparazzi.
Yes, I said that earlier.
Who was obsessed with Tilly, constantly following her around.
Tony Gardner, who was working on the Chucky Goes Psycho movie, was decapitated when a test involving a cable wire went wrong, slicing through his neck, leaving him headless in a matter of seconds.
God damn.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is where it gets fun. Because Tilly, after the movie, because basically at this point, after Gardner's death, Chucky Goes Psycho goes on hold for a while. Like I said, there is a rough cut of it out there, but it's not a very good cut, and you don't really see a whole bunch. It's very hard to get your hands on. But Tilly started to claim to people that she was being haunted by the ghost of Tiffany Valentine.
Okay.
Also at this time, Tilly became pregnant, but would not reveal who the father was.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
She'd been acting real erratic at this stage. She'd been walking around kind of talking about Tiffany a lot, and then suddenly started talking about how she was being haunted by Tiffany. She was seeing Tiffany everywhere she went. Tiffany was talking to her in her head. You know, all this kind of bullshit. And eventually things start to get really, really fucking crazy. And this is directly after like Tony Gardner's death, Peter Peters' death, and all that. Tilly is found heavily pregnant when nobody knew she was pregnant at all.
Okay.
Tied to her bed. Next to her is her driver, her car driver, who brings her from place to place, Stan West.
Yeah.
He was also stripped down to his underwear and tied up, stabbed next to her. Tilly insisted that Tiffany Valentine was the culprit of these murders, despite her death back in 1998.
Okay, but like, okay, no, I understand now. Okay, I get you.
Tilly said that...
But she believes she's been haunted by Tiffany.
She first believes she's being haunted by Tiffany. And she claims that Tiffany killed Stan West, killed Tony Gardner, killed Peter Peters, and killed, not Hannah, but Joan Spirit.
Okay.
That none of these were accidents. These were all to do with not Jennifer Tilly, but Tiffany Valentine.
Okay.
Then in the meantime, after all this is kind of cleaned up, she gives birth to twins who she names Glenn and Glenda.
Oh, girl and boy.
Another side note, during the time of the alleged Valentine attacks, 3 more people were murdered in the Tilly home.
Okay.
There was postal worker Cleveland Brown, real estate agent Carol Stills, and the one that makes me the most suspicious, a pizza delivery man by the name of Philip Fry. The only thing linking Tilly to the crimes was location. No DNA, no prints, and Tilly had witnesses for solid alibis for the estimated times of death.
So at the time, the assumption was that there was a Tiffany Valentine fangirl cosplay copycat on the loose.
They weren't wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they were just looking in the wrong place. So.
Pretty much.
But outside of an undocumented nanny by the name of Flavia Santos going missing in 2009, not an uncommon event, no more strangeness happened in the Tilly household again until 2013.
And we say it wasn't an uncommon event because she was an undocumented immigrant.
ICE could have picked her up at any hour of the night. And
yeah. So at this point, it's believed that Tilly had a bit of a breakdown, a mental breakdown, and started telling people not just that she was being haunted by Tiffany Valentine, but she was now possessed by Tiffany Valentine. And that Tiffany Valentine was the person running the show.
That's kind of admitting to murder, isn't it?
It is, but people kind of just ignored it at the time. John was like, fucking Tilly's crazy. And she was smart enough as well to keep it more in her private life. So in private, she would insist on being called Tiffany by Glenn and Glenda, by staff around her house, by close friends, that even down to her sister Meg, who she was like, my name's Tiffany now, not Jennifer. And people were worried about her at the time. But it seemed like then she kind of had to snap out of it, and suddenly every time she was about to call herself Tiffany, she'd correct herself and change it back to Jennifer.
Okay.
We know now that she had a very deep desire to resurrect Charles Lee Ray, like the legend said was possible. Okay. Her plan was to replicate Valentine sending Andy the doll, believing Neca would be the perfect vessel. Charles was like, the way she saw it. Remember how I said like that in the last episode that Tiffany had this kind of idea after she heard of Andy Barkley claiming that Charles was possessing his doll, that she might be able to manifest more murders, might, bring Charles back to the doll, like we talked about last time, that by manifesting what happened with the original possession of the good guy doll and Andy Barkley, that she might be able to bring him back fully. So she starts to commit these crimes, implicating Andy Barkley in them every time, and leaving DNA around the place to cause police to suspect that maybe Charles is still around, and maybe making the entire population of the world think he's back, and in turn making the god Damballa release Charles' soul back into the doll. Yeah. And Tilly seemed to have the same idea.
Yeah.
But she started to do what Tiffany did, and she started to research voodoo to a huge degree. And what she figured out through her time studying voodoo was that it was because the belief that what Andy had said originally was that because he was the first person that Chucky had revealed his true identity to, he had to be the vessel for Chucky's soul to go into, for Charles' soul to go into.
Okay.
Tilly believed that Valentine had misread the writings.
Okay.
And believed that it wasn't so much that he had to put his soul into the first person he revealed himself to, but she had to get the soul into his one surviving member, his unfinished business. Like ghosts. Ghosts have unfinished business. Yeah. Neca was unfinished business, and by putting her in a position with the good guy doll and replicating, like almost by putting the good guy doll there in the Pierce home, it would almost call Charles back to finish the business he had began. And then she believing, because this isn't a thing of her just telling people she was possessed by Tiffany Valentine. She
really
believed
it.
she had Tiffany inside her. She believed she was half Jennifer Tilly, half Tiffany, and that they were jumping back and forth and taking, one time, sometimes Jennifer be in control, sometimes Tiffany be in control.
Yeah.
And she had this urge to reunite Tiffany with Charles.
Okay.
So she thought the best way to do this would be to send Neca a doll, just like Tiffany used to do when she sent the doll to Andy. And her hope was that by sending her the doll and then going in orchestrating deaths around the place, that would be enough to call Charles home.
Yeah.
And that was the plan.
Okay. Well, that brings us back then to the start with the good guy doll arriving at the oblivious Pierce family house. So, and just like so many times before, the doll arrived, and within 24 hours, 2 tragic accidents would occur.
Yeah, I mean, one's definitely an accident.
Okay.
And that's the death of Father Frank Martinez. And Frank Martinez was at the Pierce home because of another, not so much of an accident. I don't even call it an accident. Suicide isn't an accident.
That's not an
In
accident.
fact, it's extremely on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The belief is that while Neca and Barb might not have been following the case of Andy Barkley, that Sarah had an idea of what was going on, and that the sight of the good guy doll was enough for her to finally lose it. And while Neca was asleep that night, she committed suicide.
So she kind of knew the connection, the Charlie.
That's the belief.
Yeah.
She never spoke about it, so we don't know for sure. Yeah. All we can do is speculate, and the speculation is that she was aware of Andy Barkley and what he had claimed. And when the good guy doll arrived, she was almost instantly, she was like, we need to get rid of this. Fuck this. This isn't ours. We need to get rid of this. And within 24 hours, she was dead. By her own hand. And Father Frank Martinez had come to the house then to discuss funeral arrangements and to help the grieving family. And on the way home, he got into a car accident.
And that was definitely an accident.
Oh, yeah. It was a bad car accident.
There was no brakes caught or anything like that. It was just car accident.
No, the car was fine in that sense. I mean, the examination of the car was there was nothing mechanically wrong with the car. But he was cut right in fucking half by the accident. Like when they took the pressure of the car, of the part of the car that was
I'd
off
say
of
the
him,
dashboard or something.
it was just right in half, and that was the end of Martinez.
Obviously dead instantly.
But again, you're looking at like these situations, and it's the same thing we've said in every single fucking episode. There's these accidents that happen the minute a good guy doll turns up in someone's home. Good guy doll turns up. It's like those stories of that fucking picture that if you have that picture in your house is going to burn down.
The crying boy.
Yeah,
because it's the only one that never burns while everything else is burnt around it.
Because they have it coated in fucking fireproof glazing.
I think this was first made in the 1980s.
I am pretty sure my grandparents had one in the spare room. But the point is, like, every time a good guy doll gets sent by Tiffany or Tilly, it is instantly followed by accidents. And I mean, like,
do you think it's kind of the same as kind of like a different kind of manifestation, though? People like know kind of like the kind of the story behind Andy Barkley and what he's alleging.
Well, I mean,
good guy got, and it's like a subconscious kind of thing. Like you're like, oh shit, there's going to be an accident.
Well, I mean, like, all right, let's play devil's advocate here for a minute. Maybe the doll isn't walking around stabbing people. Maybe the doll isn't walking around talking. But if you go to our Patreon and listen to our bonus show to live action, we spent 2 weeks talking about haunted dolls. And if you're to believe the Warrens, which we don't, they claimed that on the way home with Annabelle, that they had many near misses in the car. until they soaked her in holy water, magical holy water from Jesus himself. And that put a stop to that. And there's people who claim to have slagged off Robert the Doll, who got into serious accidents on the way home.
Yeah, Robert the Doll, I wouldn't slag him off, but I would just say the Warrens loved to throw a car crash in to let you know how like ominous something is.
Oh yeah, there was also the biker that died after slagging him off.
There was the devil made me that
one.
A
priest? Another priest? Do you remember the priest?
Yeah. Then there was the one with the exorcism where he got the heart attack. That exorcism. There was a car crash after that exorcism with the.
If you want to know more about it, check it out. We have 2 episodes. We have what we did was we had the top 20 haunted dolls, and then we narrowed down. We did a brief bio on them, and then we narrowed it down to 5 of the most popular ones, and we did a bit more in depth the week after. Going into these accidents and stuff like that.
We put a lot of bearing into all of them except the Warrens as one. As in, like, we're like, that's
I would
freaky.
call major bullshit on the Warrens now, except that I am certain their claims of Annabelle fucking up their car happened before Father Martinez's death, because that was in 2013. And at that stage, Ed was dead. And Annabelle was a fixture in their museum long before that.
So you do believe it?
No.
Bullshit,
I just thought, I would have
sorry.
thought they got the idea from this.
I get you.
But
Sorry.
obviously not so much.
No.
So after the death, obviously the family get together. Neca's already there, but Barbara Pierce, Barb as she is known, turns up with her family, which is her husband Ian, her daughter Alice, who was about 8-9 years old at the time, and her childminder Jill Taylor. So that'll tell you the kind of money these people have, that they're dragging their childminder along with them. The relationship between Neca and Barb was tense.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because Barb, like Sarah, believed that Neca was unable to take care of herself. That her disability and being in a wheelchair basically meant she was incapable of living alone and incapable of living a life, and suggested selling the family home and having Neca going into an assisted living.
And using the money for
community.
Neca to set herself up that way in assisted.
No, she wanted her half to. But Neca's half would be enough to set her up in a nice assisted living community where she could, still have a little independence, but there'd be doctors and nurses and help there for her if she needed it. No, she needed it. Neca was just your average paraplegic. Like
she didn't. It's not like she had to be hooked up to anything constantly. It's not like she couldn't feed herself.
No,
not like
just
she couldn't wash
feed her
herself.
legs. That's it.
That's it. Like,
that is all it was. So they
Well
were
able to take
tense already, and that was a suggestion that was made almost instantly. And when we get down to it at the end of this story, it was one of the things that kind of went against Neca, because the belief was that Neca murdered Barb and her family over this whole I'm going to stick you in a home kind of fucking thing.
Yeah. And police believe that when faced with the prospect of losing her freedom along with the gaslighting from Tilly, Neca lost it, massacring the family. Barb was found stabbed through the eye at the end of the attic stairs. Ian had been knocked to the floor and had his jaw removed with an axe. And Jill, the babysitter, had been electrocuted in her bedroom using an overloaded socket and a bucket of water.
And if you want to know more about axe murders, you can also check it out on Patreon. We talk about it this week. We talk about Clementine Barnabette. We talk about the axe murderers of New Orleans. So it's all axes on it. It's a live action this week. So go check that out. But she like to keep it simple. They can't all be bloodbaths. So I mean, Jill got the water. The rest of them got the blood.
Exactly. And Neca herself called in the massacre, and when Officer Adam Stanton arrived on the scene, he found her at the end of her purpose-built lift, screaming, "Chucky did it," repeatedly.
Which seems to be a mantra that nearly everybody involved in any of these stories says. I mean, we have Andy, Karen, Kyle, and Jesse. That's 4 people all screaming Chucky did it at the end of these killing sprees. So
these outbursts, along with the drastic change in personality and the evidence of digital tampering with the doll, led the judge to find Neca innocent of murder on grounds of insanity. And instead of prison, he had her incarcerated in a hospital for the criminally insane until deemed fit to rejoin society.
Yeah, well, I mean, Neca stuck to her story throughout all the interrogation and even the trial, often hurling insults at the good guy doll from the scene, which was being used as evidence in the trial.
That's going to get her put into a mental...
Oh, yeah, every now and again, flipping
Fuck
off
you,
the doll in the
Johnny.
corner. It's like, so, yeah, I mean, like, it looked like it was going okay for her, but Alice Pierce, the youngest Pierce, actually survived the incident. She wasn't murdered.
Okay.
She Neca killed the 3 adults. She loved Alice, and she actually had told Alice to hide in a wardrobe while this all went on. So that was the killer testimony, because when Alice Pierce was put on the stand, that's exactly what she said. And Neca told Neca and Chucky told me to hide in the closet.
So obviously everybody is going to think that there is Neca with Chucky on her
sitting
lap.
on her lap doing what as she was taken into custody after sentencing, she was said to be screaming at the doll, who was still sitting on the evidence table, saying, "I'm alive, you son of a bitch, you hear me? I'm still alive." So she saw it as a win.
Yeah.
Neca, like Andy, her treatment at time incarcerated was kind of very similar in the sense that she was given a lot of shock therapy. She was given a lot of pills to chew on, a lot of time to talk. They really, like, for the first year, she was really like fighting the system, trying her hardest to kind of convince everybody that she wasn't lying. She was telling the truth, and we were all in extreme danger.
Okay.
The second year, she actually kind of started to accept the fact that maybe she did lose it. She started to believe that maybe, because like any rational person, she was like, killer doll. Maybe I did do this. Maybe I blacked it out. Maybe I had a fit of psychosis. And by the third year, she decided she was going to start to... Originally, I was going to say she was working the system, but it wasn't so much that. She started to take accountability for it, and started to admit that maybe she had a problem and maybe she needed help. And she started going on the medication and doing the counseling sessions. And by the 4th year in incarceration, she was moved to from Lockmore Institution, which was very much well-secured fucking mental institution, to Harrogate Institution, which, like Andy, wasn't as open. Like we said, Andy ended up in what would have been like an open prison style mental institution. This would have been like the step before that. She had her own room that didn't have a lock on it. There was no lock on the door. She could come in and out of her room as she pleased. She could make her way around the actual institute herself and institution herself without having someone with her the whole time. She could interact with other patients. She was seen as a sick person rather than a prisoner in this place. It was more hospital than prison. Yeah. Her doctor at the time was Dr. Michael Foley. Now, his style was very in your face.
Okay.
So he got himself a good guy doll and put it in front of Neca and kind of pushed her to acknowledge that this doll was just a doll. And that's all it was. And Neca did do that. She was fine with that. She was, Now, it sounds like Dr. Foley was doing a very good job, but later accusations would come out that Dr. Foley liked to molest his patients and had a massive thing for Neca. So he would try and use hypnosis to put the patients into a trance-like state. And while they're in that trance-like state, he would take advantage of them. Or he would sedate the patients for their own good. And then when he got a chance, he'd go in and cough a feel and do what he wanted to do. And usually the patient wouldn't remember what happened, so he'd get away with it. And even if they did make accusations against him, a lot of the time it was, well, that's just a crazy person who doesn't want to follow doctor's orders, you know? So he managed to get away with it in that sense.
And everything seemed to be going well for Neca, although the reality of the fact was that she probably would never be fully free again. And she was something that she constantly had to live with. So little victories meant a lot. So being housed in Harrogate was a big win for her.
Oh, yeah.
And I say that they seem to be going well because a little visit from a certain Oscar-nominated star was about to derail Neca's progress and set her on the path of pain, torture, and revenge.
Yes, it was. Tilly, Jennifer Tilly turns up to visit Neca, and it turns out that Jennifer Tilly adopted Alice Pierce. Now, Alice Pierce, again, was in a stray... We'll talk a little bit more about it later. I'm not going to get into it now. It's going to spoil things for later, but we'll talk about it later. Neca had a little slip, if that's what you want to call it. and murdered Dr. Foley.
Okay.
Some people would say she had every right to, because
molesting.
there is proof that at the time of the murder that he was trying to molest her.
That's self-defense.
It was a pretty gruesome death. I won't get into it, but it was a pretty violent and gruesome death. Then things get really fucked up because Tilly comes back. But Tilly comes back masked. Tilly comes back covered up. Tilly comes back commando style. Balaclava on, black clothes on, and she tries to break Tilly or Neca out. She had a plan this whole time. She believed she needed Neca as a vessel for Charles.
Okay.
So while she was there, she started to orchestrate things to make life easier for her to get in and out. And after the death of Dr. Foley, she'd been keeping a close eye on this place. She saw the opportunity.
Okay.
And she literally had, she had a go bag ready. She had a bag ready with the stuff she needed. And Tilly, who was always impeccably dressed, got out of her gorgeous dress, got out of her lovely heels, took off the fur jacket, and went Dexter style, black top to bottom, big boots, walked in, even padded out the chest area to make it look more like a man, lifts in the shoes. So police at the time actually believed Tilly, or that Neca was broken out by by what they saw as a Chucky supporter.
Okay.
Someone who believed the Barkley story, who believed the Jesse Jade story, who believed the Neca Pierce story. Okay. People who genuinely believed that maybe, just maybe, Charles Lee Ray really was coming back into this good guy doll. And that's what they thought. They thought that this was just somebody trying to get her out of incarceration.
Okay.
But really what happened was Jennifer Tilly came in, murdered 5 patients, 2 staff members with glass, knives, drills, strangulation, and suffocation as she made her way quietly through the hospital in the dead of night.
Drills seem like a lot of effort.
Oh, drill to the skull. Well, she had the guy knocked down before she did it to him. And it was one of the crazier members of the hospital.
Still doesn't make it okay.
She then went in. At that point, Neca was pretty fucking beat. Like, she had kind of been through a bit trying to take down the doctor. And she was beaten and bruised herself a bit and a bit tired. And Tilly basically, all she had to do was come in, cuff her to the chair and wheel her right out. And make off with her. At that point, Tilly kept Neca in captivity for... it was a good long fucking time, I'll tell you that much. But I can't think of it off the top of my head. 1 second, and I will tell you. It was from 2017 till 2020, I think.
3 years?
2020 or 2021.
Okay.
I can't remember. When did Tilly die? I can't remember. Well, it was before she died. So 2020, that's when they got her out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So for years, Tilly's delusions were mainly kept to the privacy of her home, and any quirks in public were just seen just as that, quirks of an eccentric celebrity. A former A-list Oscar nominee, now a cartoon voice actor, trying with all her might to stay relevant with stories of an extreme BDSM sex life, and slips in how she'd refer to herself in public, sometimes accidentally introducing herself as Tiffany.
It's Tiffany, yeah.
Tiffany.
And that's what we were saying earlier on. I mean, I said earlier on that she started to get better at this and splitting that off to private and public life. But as you get to 2017, these slips are happening way more often. And she's really forgetting herself in public and really starting to lean into the Tiffany stuff to the point where people were saying she was drawing on the little beauty mark that Tiffany liked to draw on. That she was speaking a lot more like Tiffany used to speak. That her mannerism, even down to the way she used her voice. Okay. I mean, Jennifer Tilly is a very distinct voice. From what I hear, Tiffany Valentine also had a very distinct voice and was very close to Tilly's, which is why they wanted to cast her in Chucky Goes Psycho to begin with. Okay. And it was just believed that she just started to lean more and more and more into this Tiffany Valentine persona in her public life, and the tabloids and the paparazzi were eating it up. They were following her everywhere. They were writing about her. They were snapping pictures. And I mean, whatever about Valentine, Tilly was fucking loving it.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because again, she was back where she wanted to be, right in front of everybody on the front page. But at the same time, she obviously has this ulterior motive because she has really went completely down the route now of, I am Tiffany Valentine and I need my man back, you know?
Exactly. So like we've said, Tilly, for the most part, did a good job keeping her private life private, and with good reason. Because what Tilly was working on privately was the live action version of Barclay's original claims. You see, Tilly's little public slips into Tiffany were just that, like little slips. But once the lights and camera were off her, she was full-blown Valentine.
Yeah, just like I was saying. She just leaned right into it.
Yeah. She truly believed with all certainty that she had been possessed by the soul of Tiffany Valentine, and she planned to see the legend come to life by bringing her back her one true love, Charles, just as he had done himself in 88, 90 and 98.
I mean, I see your logic. He pulled it off from beyond the grave 3 times himself. 4 if you believe Jesse's story.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, how hard could it really be?
Tilly, like Ray before her, studied the voodoo teachings of Damballa, and over the course of a decade learned the rituals she needed to perform and formulated a plan to make it happen.
So, like we said earlier on, Tilly's plan was simple. She believed that Charles' unfinished business was Neca, that he had never got to finish Neca off, and that Neca would, in turn, because of her survival, Harry Potter style. Because Voldemort couldn't kill Harry, Voldemort becomes a shell of his former self. And the belief is that Neca is Harry in this situation. And she needs Neca to bring Voldemort back, to bring Chucky back. Do you know? So, almost like Chucky's powers, Charles's powers are inside of Neca as a vessel, and she needs it. But more in a turn on it, she saw it more as not that Neca held Charles's powers, but that she, because of the unfinished business and because of the ghostly idea of ghost needing a ghost being a soul with unfinished business, that Neca will be the perfect person for Charles's soul to inhabit, and that Andy was never the right choice. That was a mistake that Charles had made, and that this is her way of fixing it.
Yeah.
So so by sending the doll to Neca, she knows she's setting that up. She's getting that rolling. And then after that, after the whole Neca thing is done and she's incarcerated, she knows she's got to up the ante a little bit. So Alice, who was the sole surviving Pierce, is given to Ian, Barb's husband's mother, to take care of. Her grandmother was also found suffocated to death with a plastic bag over her head. At the time, they weren't sure if it was Alice or not. But because of the child's height, strength, and how traumatized she was by the murder, she didn't think it was. And then Tilly came forward playing the charitable celebrity with all her money and all her wealth, and I'll take her. And of course, when the social workers go to talk to Glenn and Glenda are talking about how great their mother is, because whatever about the way Tilly treated everybody else, even when she was Tiffany, Glenn and Glenda weren't just Tilly's kids, they were Tiffany's kids in her eyes as well. She, that's why there's so much fucking, I don't know how to say it. There's so much mystery around who the father of Glenn and Glenda actually is. Okay. Because when you asked Tilly at the time, she said they were the children of Charles Lee Ray.
Okay.
So she believed she was basically, she believed it was an immaculate conception of Tiffany and Charles pushing their children from beyond the grave into Tilly's body. So she never actually, we haven't to this day found out who the actual father of Glenn and Glenda actually is. Okay. She then visits Neca and tells her that Alice had passed away. Said she got sick and died. Now, later on, police investigation will look into it and Tilly murdered Alice. Apparently, a failed attempt at
getting her into Alice's body, or Alice into...
This was before she felt at the time that Neca was almost out of reach where she would have been put. And that it was going to be very difficult for her to pull Neca out of a mental institution without bringing all that attention on herself. Which she was right, because as we're going to go on here, we're going to see this is eventually going to lead to her own downfall. But the belief in her own mind, she was like, okay, maybe I take half my idea and half of Charles' idea and we stick them both together and hope it works. So the plan was that maybe the Pierce blood in this young girl would be the perfect vessel for Charles to get into. Because Tiff, why would he want to be in Neca? Neca's damaged. She wouldn't be able to walk. Why not put her into this? And it comes from the same family. It's got to work. Okay. But it didn't, and in the process, she ends up killing the child. You know? Now, I don't know, was it in the process or because it didn't work, she killed the child in anger? But either way, Alice did not survive. And she went, her visit to Neca in the hospital was to land that bombshell on her. Was to tell her. And again, they reckon at the time, they believe that was also a major contributing factor in her killing her doctor, Dr. Foley. That she snapped when he tried to molest her, basically. It was, I don't know, was it the same day or within 48 hours of her finding out about Alice's death? And she had just lost it. And in her own head, she believed that Tilly had something to do with it. Because of Tilly's mannerisms and the way she acted around her and even the coldness in the way she told her of Alice's death. Okay. So, like I said, she attacks the institution. She did, like I said, Neca was pretty beaten up, but she did inject her with some shit as well along the way. Like, you know, so she did keep her well drugged up. Tried some voodoo rituals at the actual institution. Okay. Not much, but she did. And while she was at it, she left a string of good guy dolls. Okay. There was all different types. It seemed like she had been experimenting with them. There was a bald one. There was one with a drill bit in his hand, which we assume it was almost like she had one for each kill that she had committed along the way. Okay. Yeah. And she had placed them near each body with whatever instrument she had used at the time. So after she done the voodoo ritual and the kidnapping, she actually started to believe that Neca was like her in the sense of, whereas now Tilly completely believes she was 100% Valentine. Yeah. At first, she believed she was only sharing the body with her. Okay. At this point, she has abandoned Jennifer Tilly and she is now Valentine. And only Tilly, and Jennifer Tilly for her is a secret identity. The thing to hide from everybody else that Tiffany Valentine is back and killing. Okay. And she believed at first when Neca was protesting that she was still Neca, that you only think you're Neca. Charles is in there. He'll eventually break through and we'll be together again. Okay.
Police believed the news of the passing of her young niece and final family member was the motivation for the escape, and a nationwide bolo was put out for Pierce, who police knew was working with an unknown accomplice because of CCTV and her own disabilities. Fear spread throughout Hackensack and the surrounding area as Neca Pierce, now with accomplices, was believed to be the head of what would become known as the cult of Chucky.
How wrong they were. So between 2017 and 2020, Neca was a captive, basically, to Jennifer Tilly. Because, like I said, like you said, the case against Tilly was dropped and people stopped paying attention. So they started looking for Neca Pierce, and they believed that she, at this point, had a network of
accomplices.
Yeah, cult members that believed in the Andy Barclay story, that believed in the Charles Lee Ray urban legend, the Chucky myth, and that they were helping her move from place to place to place to place.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is that she was locked up in Tilly's house, in a secret room in Tilly's house.
Okay.
And what made it worse was to make sure that she wouldn't go anywhere or wouldn't call anybody, let alone, because we already know she didn't have any power in her legs. Tilly decided to amputate both arms as well, making it impossible for Neca to make any great escape. No, she basically kept her like a pet. But she did genuinely love her. I mean, like, Tilly loved Neca.
Because it was her last connection to Charles, yeah?
Well, her belief was Charles was inside her.
Oh, yeah.
So at this point, she absolutely is head over heels for Neca. But the problem is that in her own psychosis, she sometimes walked into the room and saw Neca, and other times she'd walk into the room and see Charles.
I get you.
So when she saw Neca, she'd be nice and polite to Neca and treat her really well, but she'd ask for Charles and then she'd leave. And when she come back, she'd be like, "Oh, Charles, my baby, what would you like?" And start feeding him pizza and spaghetti and meatballs, because apparently the Swedish meatballs, to be particular,
oh, nice,
they were some of his favourite foods.
And Neca just had to put up with it.
Yes, exactly. Now, in the meantime, you have Glenn and Glenda. They'd grown up and moved out of the house. What they were told of their origin was the same batch of crazy stuff that we were just talking about. They were told that their father was Charles Lee Ray. They were told that their mother's real identity was Tiffany Valentine.
Okay.
Now, both twins were very well aware that none of that was true, and they were very well aware that their mother was very, very sick.
Okay.
But they obviously loved their mom, and they thought that they could hide, that it was harmless. She wasn't hurting anybody.
Yeah.
As far as they could see, they weren't. They weren't hurting anybody. She wasn't hurting anybody. That was until 2020, when Tilly went 100% completely off the rails by accidentally murdering her sister Meg, also an accomplished actor and writer.
Yeah.
And we spoke about her earlier. She murdered Meg because Meg found Neca.
So it was kind of a case of having to. Not a. I hate you, Meg.
She calls it accidental. I don't know why I wrote accidental. That's a stupid thing for me to say. She murdered her. She killed her because she believed, and in her brain anyway, Meg wasn't her sister. She was Jennifer Tilly's sister, not Jennifer, not Tiffany Valentine's sister.
Okay.
Glenn and Glenda obviously noticed that their aunt has gone missing. They were extremely close with her. They needed to be extremely close to her because of the way her mother was. Their mother was. They needed a real mother, and Meg kind of stepped into that role and helped to raise these two children. So when they weren't at Tilly's house, when they weren't at one Tilly's house, they were at the other Tilly's house. So they noticed that Meg went missing and went to talk to their mother to inquire about it. They tried to play coy for a while. According to them, they said they had an idea from the minute they got there that something wasn't right.
Okay.
It was like, there was crazy, but this was like a new level. The way she was acting. It wasn't just that she was acting crazy as in, I'm Tiffany Valentine. She seemed nervous. And suddenly there were certain rooms that were locked, that weren't usually locked. And any time Glenn or Glenda got near one of these rooms, Tilly would rush over and shepherd them away from it as quick as she could and be like, "Oh, there's nothing in there, it's just a big mess. I have to get that all cleaned up," and all this kind of thing. So eventually they devised a plan to separate Tilly from one of them. They basically, Glenn takes Tilly off out for the day while Glenda goes poking around, and she comes across Neca and frees Neca.
And with Neca free, it was only a matter of time before Tilly would lose her freedom, that is. And only a few hours after Neca's escape, Tilly was plastered all over the news. Her homes were raided and she was arrested, and the true depth of her obsession was revealed to the world.
Do you know what's funny? If she was still Jennifer Tilly, she'd only be delighted. Her face plastered all over TV. That's what she wanted. That's what she was looking for before she went after Ale. So, I mean, the trial was something else too. Core TV hasn't seen ratings like that since the OJ trial. Throughout the trial, Tilly reverted fully back to herself and blamed the evil Tiffany entity inside for all the murders and mayhem she had perpetrated over the 2 decades previous. In the trial, multiple good guy dolls were produced for evidence, with Tilly blowing kisses at them and saying, "Hi, doll face," to many of them as they entered into court. There were also multiple custom Tiffany-style wedding bell dolls and a strange-looking goblin-like doll that she claimed originally housed the jewel souls of Glenn and Glenda.
At the time, she claimed that a Tiffany cosplay killer was responsible for the 2003 murders, a copycat killer who was never caught. You want to tell everybody what happened when she claimed that in the trial in 2020?
Well, what actually happened, you mean, in 2003?
Yeah.
So, okay. Basically, what really happened is she became impregnated, what we believe was by her driver who was found murdered.
Okay.
She then murdered all those people, making most of them look like accidents, some of them look like murders, and planted the idea of there being a Tiffany Valentine copycat around the place.
Okay.
And it made sense to police at the time because of the movie that was being shot on the lot not far from her house. I mean, the Chucky Goes Psycho, I mean, we've seen it before, we've talked about it again on It's Live Action and on Real Monsters on Patreon and stuff like that. When we were talking about the original Ghostface killers, we talked about how when they started making the stab movies to go with those killings, suddenly there was a lot more we suddenly had a lot more copycats, enough for us to fill fucking 5 episodes so fucking far. We still have another 2 episodes to do on Ghostface killings. Yep. I just wanted to wait until the dust settled before we started getting into the Kirsch family and what they had been up to. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, the true story basically is her psychosis that we think only broke at this point had broken all the way back then, and she was committing these murders, and in her head she truly believed that the twins inside of her were put there by
Charles
and Tiffany
I get
to house the non-binary new doll that Tilly had introduced into the story.
Okay.
This new doll, they called her Gigi. They called it Gigi. And she claimed that the reason it became twins, that it separated into twins, was that the Charles doll and the Tiffany doll that she also had could not agree on whether Gigi was a boy or a girl, because obviously dolls don't come with genitalia.
No, they don't.
So she claimed that that's why she had twins, so that they could be split, so that both killer dolls were right, and that there was actually 2 souls stuck in this goblin-like doll that they call Gigi.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously this story all got left down when Glenn and Glenda stepped forward and said, "Look, our mom's
We're
sick.
good people.
Our mom is sick, really, really sick, and none of this is true.
Yeah,
and we've always been separate people. And I mean, look, they didn't. She needed
You've
to
always been separate.
She need to be saying. They didn't need to be saying that, but obviously it was something that was brought up in court and was kind of like the end of it after that for Tilly.
And needless to say, this story didn't fly in court, and it was believed by the judge and jury that Tilly was trying to replicate Neca's.
Excuse me.
You're okay? You okay?
Yeah. Oh, I muted my mic. They could have kept hearing you.
I'm sorry. She was trying to replicate Neca's defense in order to get off with an insanity plea. But that's not how it went for the once popular actress. And she was found guilty of kidnapping, torture, attempted murder, mutilation, and multiple counts of murder, and was sentenced to die by lethal injection.
In the court TV footage, you can see Tilly lose it, but she composes herself long enough to demand voodoo books and tools so she could practice her religious beliefs, which is her right in prison.
Neca rubbed it in her face so bad too. I mean, she gave her a super small gotcha bitch victim impact statement. So no sad emotional speech, just a spite-filled rotten hell. I win, you lose. Victory tirade.
And you'd think that would be the end of the story, but we got a little bit more to go. But before I get into that, it is very Neca-like, isn't it? I mean, for her to rub it in her face a little bit, because even when Neca was being had been found guilty and was being wheeled out of her court case, she's screaming at the doll saying, "You didn't get me, you motherfucker! I got you! Ha! Fuck you!" So, I mean, it seems like she wasn't the type to fucking sit there and cry about things. It was more of a fucking gotcha, you know?
Nice.
So, Tilly's time in prison was spent predominantly reading voodoo books and making little voodoo dolls out of her hair and out of basically anything she could get her hands on. Proper voodoo dolls that she felt she could control people with. She did get into 2 relationships with 2 COs there, 2 officers there. 1 female, 1 male.
Oh,
Erica Dorset and Eli Dasson, who both were well aware of the other's relationship and were happy to share Tilly. So basically, Tilly got whatever the fuck she wanted while she was in prison, because these 2 would give her anything, like devoted fans of her.
Okay.
I mean, super fans. On the day of the execution, they were such fans that on the day of the execution, I mean, Tilly was strapped to the table waiting for the lethal injection when Dorset and Dasson committed a mass shooting, killing multiple people in the prison and helping Tilly escape.
The assumption has to be that Tilly would have gotten very far with such a recognizable face, and the whole world would be watching for her. So unfortunately, how long she would have stayed on the lam will remain a mystery, just as her death will.
Yep. 1 of 2 things happened here. After a few days running, Tilly was hit by a semi-truck, destroying her body, leaving only chunks of the former actress to identify her with, similar to poor Dave in the Jessie Jade case.
Yep.
Some say the pressure of being on the run and the prospect of returning to the slow weight of death row, dying in front of an audience, including Neca Pierce, led her to suicide, choosing to walk out in front of the truck. But witnesses, including the truck driver himself, claimed that Tilly seemed distracted leaving her car and that her death was indeed an accident. Either way, we'll never know. What we do know, though, is this is the last of the ever-growing legend, and that it died with Tilly herself. The legend that was spawned from a storm, a serial killer, and some mumbo-jumbo he muttered before his death. Now, I will say it's only been a few years since her death, but for now, it's all clear. But one thing is for sure, the legend of Chucky will be back. It always comes back. But the question, though, is Chucky truly real? Or is mass voodoo psychosis the real answer to the legend of the Lakeshore Strangler?
And if you liked that and want to hear more, you can check out our Patreon at the Horrorverse Network. We have tons more content there for your listening pleasure right now. From history to wrestling, true crime to cryptids and ghosts. We got something for everyone.
And you can check all that out now with our 7-day free trial at the Horrorverse Network on Patreon.
Also, check us out on Instagram too. That's where we drop all our news, updates, videos, pics, and memes at Alive Alive Pod and at Amy Rose IAA.
We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. It's the Alive Alive podcast. All the guts and gore, none of the guilt. See you all next time. Same Alive Alive time, same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.